Welcome to episode 355, where I'm answering questions from the Elements community. I'm answering questions on natural hair dye, how to manage the change of seasons for optimal health and well-being, along with cooking tips for this transition of the seasons. So please stay tuned. Hi there, I'm your host Colette, and on this podcast I will be sharing the teachings of Ayurveda, yoga, and holistic health practices. Now, if you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend checking out the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. Thanks for listening, and now here's a new episode. Hey there, welcome back to the Elements of Ayurveda podcast. It's Colette for a solo episode where I'm answering questions from the Elements community. I have 3 great questions here, so let's get right into it. The first one is from Bernadette. Bernadette says, I love summertime and always dread the fall. As soon as September starts, my body and mind seem to just break down, and it continues for months. I'm determined to not have this experience again this year. What can I do to keep my body and mind stable? Okay, thanks, Bernadette, for your question. And I want to let you know you're not alone with this feeling. It's common for people to have that season where they don't feel like they're functioning optimally, and it's usually associated with our doshic makeup. For example, it's common for people with a high Vata constitution to dislike the season where the weather is cool, dry, and windy, which is normally associated with fall or autumn in the northern hemisphere, as this is considered to be Vata season when the qualities of this season are similar to that of the Vata dosha: cool, dry, and mobile or windy. And keeping in mind the Ayurvedic principle of like increasing like, these like qualities will increase the Vata dosha, and that will result in imbalances in the body and mind. Similarly, those with a high Kapha constitution can often dislike the season with the Kapha qualities in that cold, wet, and heavy, and that's usually associated with late winter and spring. And those with a high Pitta constitution can find the hot season very challenging, as it will increase the Pitta dosha. However, the good news, Bernadette, is that it can be managed, and with awareness and planning, you can transition into fall in good health and actually enjoy the season. In fact, this information I'm about to share is good for any seasonal transition to help keep your body and mind in balance, with a robust immune system helping to prevent those seasonal sicknesses. The first part of planning for this transition is ensuring that your digestive fire, your Agni, is functioning optimally. Ayurveda recommends a seasonal cleanse from the transition of summer to fall or autumn and the transition of spring to summer. A holistic cleanse, which is tailored to your current health status, will help you to eliminate any accumulation of toxins and any accumulation of doshas from the previous season. It's natural for us to have a rise in the dosha of that season. For example, at the end of the summer season, we're naturally going to have an accumulation of the Pitta dosha, especially for those with a high Pitta constitution. And this cleanse will also help to improve your digestion and elimination, boost your immunity, calm your nervous system, which will help then to improve your sleep and restore balance, clarity, and energy. I feel that it's very important that a cleanse is tailored to each individual, because if you don't have experience with cleansing, and I actually see this a lot, you may unknowingly be increasing aggravation rather than pacifying it with the incorrect cleanse ingredients and spices for your current health status.
If you're interested in a individualized cleanse, then check out my next group discounted cleanse, which starts October 4th. And this holistic cleanse comes with a 90-minute online consultation with me so that I can tailor the recipes, the self-care, and the mindfulness, etc., to you and your lifestyle, ensuring that you can easily fit this cleanse into your day. And with this group cleanse, we have a private community where we can support each other and hold each other accountable. Now, if that group cleanse date of October 4th does not work for your schedule, you can opt for a private cleanse. They're both the same structure. With a private cleanse, you just get to choose your own dates, and you have me one-to-one for support. You can find all the details on my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com. The October 4th group discounted cleanse will be under events. And I'll also put those details in the show notes. Okay, so that's the first part of the plan for a seasonal transition, cleansing your body and making sure you're entering the new season with a strong, healthy body and mind, and ensuring that we're not carrying the accumulated toxins or accumulated doshas into the new season. And Ayurveda provides us with seasonal routines called ritucharya to help us with this seasonal transition. Ritu means season and charya means discipline or regime. These guidelines help us to live in tune with nature, adjusting our diet and lifestyle to the changing weather patterns. And we adjust by bringing in the opposite qualities of the season. And so living by that Ayurvedic principle of like increases like and opposites pacify. So let me give you an example. In Vata season, when the weather is cool, dry, and mobile or windy, foods should be warm, grounding, and nourishing to counteract the dry, cold, and mobile qualities of Vata. Bringing these qualities into your diet and into your lifestyle too, with grounding, calming practices like mindfulness, yin or restorative yoga, and Abhyanga oil massage. These practices will help to ground the body and mind, and the oil massage will help to nourish the tissues. And of course, living in tune with the circadian rhythm is really important. Maintaining a routine in sleeping and waking and eating will help to keep Vata in balance during this season. In Kapha season, when the weather is wet and cold and heavy, you want to bring in light, warm foods with digestive spices. And this is recommended to combat the heaviness and sluggishness associated with Kapha. Lifestyle practices should include lots of activity and stimulation to counter the sluggishness and lethargy that can be common with aggravated Kapha dosha. And in Pitta season, when the weather is hot and intense, cooling, bland, and hydrating foods are preferred to balance that sharp, intense heat. Bringing cooling practices into your lifestyle too. Maybe exercising in the water is a great activity to keep Pitta cool, and definitely avoiding exposure to the sun and overexertion. Now, there is some education that needs to happen here so that you, first of all, understand your unique constitution and understand the qualities of your doshic makeup. With this information, you will be empowered by increased awareness to incorporate a holistic plan, which includes your diet, lifestyle, self-care, exercise, and mindfulness. And I know it sounds like a lot when you're first starting out in your journey with Ayurveda, but it really does become second nature. Just like you change your clothes with the season, you make these other shifts also with your food and lifestyle. Now, if you need support with understanding the information and how it applies to your specific mind-body type, then I have a couple of options for you. I offer online consultations so we can chat in detail and I can help you understand your mind-body type and educate you on how to manage it. Or if you prefer to study alone, then you can check out my Daily Habits for Holistic Health program. This is a 28-day self-paced program where I explain in detail the principle of opposites. I help you implement routines to help you live in tune with the circadian rhythm, and also discuss self-care and mindfulness practices that are dosha specific. I'll put a link to both of those options in the show notes if you're interested in learning more. But the main goal of Ritucharya, the seasonal regime, is to maintain harmony between the body and the changing environment, ensuring a smooth transition between the seasons to help prevent seasonal imbalances that can lead to illness. By aligning with nature, in that with the circadian rhythm and the seasonal weather shifts, we can maintain good health, vitality, and well-being throughout the year. So there you go, Bernadette, some general advice on how to manage this transition. And Ayurveda gives us those wonderful Ritucharya to help us with the transition, but also understanding your own unique makeup is really important. So you can make decisions for your unique mind-body type. I hope that helps, Bernadette, and thank you so much for your question. And I hope you enjoy the fall. Okay, moving on to the next question we have from Susan. Susan says, I recently had a reaction to hair dye at my hairdressers. My scalp became very irritated and itchy. What could have caused this? And what type of hair dye do you recommend? Hi, Susan. Sorry to hear that you had that experience, and I've definitely been there too. We know that anything we put in or on our body is digested by our skin and enters into our bloodstream. And so we have to be really aware of the beauty care products we're using, including hair dye. Now, I'm not exactly sure what type of product you use, but most likely it had synthetic ingredients in the dye, and this is probably what caused the reaction. As I said, I've had this experience of having a reaction to hair dye years ago, and my scalp was really sensitive after the process. And from then, I said no more synthetic hair dye, and I switched to henna. And I really haven't had any problems since. In fact, my hair and scalp is really nourished by henna. So henna, also known as mendi, is a natural hair dye which is derived from the leaves of the Lawsonia inermis plant. And this plant is a small flowering shrub that grows in tropical and subtropical regions of Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Now, henna has been used for thousands of years for various purposes: hair dyeing, body art, and as part of cultural and religious ceremonies. The active compound in henna leaves is called lawsone, a reddish-orange dye molecule that binds with the keratin in hair, skin, and nails, creating a natural stain. Henna is a natural product with no chemicals or synthetic additives when it's used in its pure form. The leaves are dried and ground into a fine powder and then mixed with liquids to form a paste for application. Henna is quite easy to find, and I buy it in my local health food shop. And the one I buy, it's organic, and you just have to add water to it and then apply it to your hair. It can be a bit messy, yes. It's a reddish orange dye, but the exact shade can vary depending on your original hair color, the quality of the henna, and how long you leave it in your hair. But not only does henna color the hair, but it also conditions the hair, leaving it shiny, thick, and strong. And henna also has cooling properties. And so it's used medicinally too, to reduce heat on the scalp and the skin, soothing burns and treating certain skin conditions. I know after I use henna, my hair looks really great and conditioned and shiny. But there are other plant dyes that are used too. Indigo, which is also called Neil, is used for darker shades of brown or black. And then it's not a dye, but amla, you've heard me talk about a lot, or Indian gooseberry, can be used to enhance and darken the effects of other dyes. And then Bringraj, which is not for dyeing, but is known for promoting hair growth and preventing graying. But Bringraj oil or powder strengthens the hair roots, prevents hair loss, and may slow down graying. And it's often used in hair oils or added to henna mixtures for nourishment. As I said, I'm more familiar with henna, but all these are safe alternatives to synthetic hair dyes as they're a natural dye free from chemicals, which reduce the risk of allergies, scalp irritation, damage, and also avoids any synthetic chemicals entering into your bloodstream. However, please get advice from a professional hairdresser, especially if you're currently using a synthetic dye. And you should always do a patch test also before you use even a natural product to check for any reactions. Using these natural hair dyes is a really gentle, natural way to color and care for your hair and your health. Okay, Susan, so I hope that helps. And thanks again for your question. Okay, my final question today is from Anita. And Anita says, do you have any recipes you can share to help with that blah time between summer and fall where it's hard to know what to eat? Okay, thanks, Anita, for this great question. And I agree, that time between the seasons, whether it's summer to fall or spring to summer, can be a challenging time for cooking because when it's at a late stage in the season, we're often just tired of those staple dishes we were cooking all season and the ingredients we were using. And we're really not craving those foods of the coming season yet. And this is happening to me right now. During the summer, I've eaten a lot of chickpeas and hummus and courgettes and cilantro. And now I'm really kind of growing tired of these foods. However, I'm certainly not ready to turn on the oven and cook the autumn produce, which I am seeing in the farmer's market, like the squashes and pumpkins, because the weather is just still very hot. And we know that during the transition of the seasons, the weather can go back and forth between the seasons and can be really changeable. And this can cause confusion in our digestive system, which is why Ayurveda recommends cleansing, as I mentioned in the reply to the first question from Bernadette, because this aids the digestive system during this transition. But my general advice is to keep your diet very simple during this transition time when the weather is really changeable. And ideally stick with cooked foods and use digestive spices. Cooking the food and using spices to aid digestion will help to take the burden off the digestive system, which can be compromised during this time of change. And choosing ingredients appropriate for your constitution. Now, in my consultations, I give education and food lists and tailored guidance on this. But in general, this is what I would recommend for the few weeks of this transition of the seasons. First of all, only eat when you feel hungry. Of course, making sure you're not suppressing your appetite with caffeine. But if you're not feeling hungry, your system may be sluggish. And so what I would recommend then is sipping on hot water or digestive tea like ginger to help to stimulate your appetite. And have your harder to digest foods like proteins, meats, or legumes in the middle of the day when your digestive fire is strongest, and keep the evening meal lighter and easier to digest. So that's very simple general advice for everyone. Now, when it comes to dosha specific advice, it's important to tailor it to each individual as each person has a different doshic makeup. And of course, you have to take a lot of other things into consideration like age, climate, lifestyle, current imbalances, and lots more. But I am going to give you some general doshic advice. So if you have a vata dominant constitution, it will be best to choose seasonal root vegetables because they will provide the heavy grounding qualities that are opposite to the vata light and airy qualities. And also you want some grounding grains like rice, because these are substantial, but they're still easy to digest. Now, I would avoid brown rice during this period because that can be harder to digest. For vata, I would avoid light and dry grains like couscous, millet, or quinoa because they have those light, dry qualities, which are similar to that of vata, and it will increase vata. Now, of course, you can counter this light and dryness by using lots of good fats on these grains, like ghee or tahini or something like that, to counter those light, dry qualities. So there are ways around it, but just be aware that if you're just having those grains on their own, which are light and dry, they will aggravate those vata qualities of lightness and dryness. Also, the variable vata digestive fire is prone to gas and bloating and could use the aid of digestive spices like ginger, black pepper, and cumin. But it's best to avoid the very pungent spices like cayenne and chili and so on, as these can increase vata. Now, if you have a pitta dominant constitution, choosing seasonal root vegetables is ideal here also, as they will ground and counter the light quality of pitta. However, you want to steer clear of the nightshades, as they can aggravate pitta, especially the transition at the end of summer. Nightshades include white potatoes, eggplant or aubergine, peppers, and tomatoes. Sticking with cooked and bland food is best at the end of the hot season, because if you're going to use those sharp, intense spices, they can increase pitta. And if you have a kapha dominant constitution, you want to follow the rule of only eating when you feel hungry and sipping on the hot water or ginger tea to stimulate your digestion, especially if you're noticing your digestion is sluggish. And you can enjoy a variety of veggies and legumes, because these will provide fiber for your sluggish digestive system, and cook them with a variety of spices. Generally, kapha doesn't have to worry about avoiding certain spices because they are good for a kapha dominant constitution to aid digestion. Now, if you have a kapha pitta constitution, then that information needs to be tailored to you. But in general, for kapha, you can enjoy all the spices. But it's best to limit the harder to digest proteins like meat or nut butters or any heavy greasy foods during the time of the transition when the digestive system can be compromised, because these are hard to digest and will require a lot of extra energy. And also avoiding cold foods and cold drinks, which can increase sluggishness in the kapha system. Ideally, during the transition for everybody, I recommend broths, soups, stews, if the weather is not too hot, of course. These dishes, because they're cooked for a long time, will make them easier to digest. Now, if the weather is still hot, then you could opt for steaming or lightly cooking or roasting veggies. Following these guidelines for a few weeks of the seasonal transition will really help your digestive fire to function well, which will ensure good health. So there you go, Anita. I hope those cooking tips were helpful for you, and please reach out if you want more tailored advice. And if any of you are looking for support on your journey, then please check out my online services. Don't forget, I have that discounted group cleanse coming soon, starting October 4th. And if you're joining that, we need to do your 90-minute consultation prior to that. So make sure that you register and book your 90-minute consultation soon. I also offer the separate online consultations. And as I mentioned earlier, if you like to study by yourself, I have the Daily Habits for Holistic Health program. And if you have any questions before you book any of my services, then please take advantage of my free 15-minute online services inquiry call. We can hop on Zoom and I can answer all of your questions. So thanks again to Bernadette, Susan, and Anita for submitting those questions from the Elements community. I really appreciate it. And thank you for tuning in. If you think this episode will be helpful to family or friends, I would appreciate if you would share it with them. And if you haven't already subscribed or followed the podcast, then please do so. And the new episodes will automatically download for you every week. And if you're finding this content helpful, I would really appreciate a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcast. That will help others find the podcast, and we can spread this wonderful wisdom of Ayurveda. Come join me on social media. You'll find me on Facebook under Elements Healing and Wellbeing, and my new Instagram page is Elements of Ayurveda Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take good care of yourself. Be well, and bye for now. Slán go fóill.